Well, good morning. It's around about 6 o'clock in the morning. We're about to go on a very long journey today, something like a 5 or 6 hour journey to go and collect 5 video recorders, 2 professional Super VHS and 2 M2 machines and a Beta, none of which work. So let's go on our long journey. I've got my helper Scott with me.
Hi.
Side by side. Let's see if that's working. Try to retain my fingers. Yeah, I think we're there. Yeah, good. Okay. Okay, it's next day. Let's work through the equipment we picked up yesterday. Looking around the back here, where would the optional extra time-based corrector connectors go? I think here, so I suspect it doesn't have time-based corrector. These don't have standard S-video connectors. They've got these really silly connectors which are actually the same as used on, I think they're the same as used on pneumatic, but they are actually S-video. But fortunately, it does come with the necessary cables to convert to S-video. Right, so that's the recorder. Here's the player. So that was the 822. This is a 622. Very similar machine, and again, probably doesn't have the time-based corrector option. Let's have a look around the back. Okay, around the back, yeah, again, I think no time-based on this one. Okay, let's take that one out. Big packet of information. Let's have a look at this. Original flyers for the 622 and 822. Catalogues. And operating instructions for the M2 machines and for the SVHS. Right, then finally here we have the recorder and player of M2 format. So this is an AU-65, this is AU-63, and I don't know what the status is on these, so we'll have some fun, power them up and see what they do. Okay, here's the first machine, C9, let's power it up. Making an interesting noise. It clearly has power supply problems. I don't know if you heard, it was making a sort of whining noise. Okay, so that makes 2 Sony C9s I've got with power supply problems. But I also have a scrap one in the shed which I think has a good power supply, so we should be able to do something with those. Next machine we're going to look at is the SVHS player BR-S622E. I'll also take a look in here in a moment, but let's just power it up. Looks like it's alive. See if we can put a tape in. Not quite sure what's going on. Okay, I'll have a little look inside, I think. There appears to be a tape half stuck inside, because I can see some tape here, but it's not going around this guide, so it's sort of half laced. This is a lacing motor here. Maybe I just need to fish that tape out and see where we are. Okay, I'll power it up again and see if I can eject the tape. Or it can attempt to eject the tape. It's left a spool of tape, so the real drive isn't working. I don't believe so. See if we can do fast forward. Got a number there, 72, which is probably an error message. It's tried to lace up again with the tape only on one of the tape guides, so it won't like that. Error 73 again. Right, I'll stop it there and see if I can get the tape on both guides. Okay, it's half laced now. I think the motor's belt, the belts are slipping on the lacing mechanism, so that should be an easy fix. Let's try changing those. Okay, well, it's ejected the tape, but without getting the tape back into the cassette. Okay, it needed a little bit of help to complete lacing. Let's just see if it plays. Well, we have time counter running. Stop. Let's try rewind. That's okay. Fast forward. Play again. Servo lock. It looks like it's all sort of running. Try eject. Yeah, it's just not taking up the tape in the eject. That's not good. And then the drive belts have come off. That's the top one, that's the bottom one. And there you can see they're a little misshapen. I don't think they're poor enough to stop the machine from operating, so I don't know why it's not completing the lace up. And I also don't know whether that's got any bearing and why it's not doing any tape unlace during eject. I've changed just that top belt with one from a Sanyo Beta video recorder, because what else would you use? Let's see if we get any better life out of it. I don't think so. That's still not managing to lace up fully. But when it does, it can play okay. But for eject, I really don't think we're going to get any real drive. No, and that's our big problem. Okay, I've changed both loading belts, but I don't really think we're going in the right direction here, because our big problem is lack of take-up during eject. But let's see if at least it can fully lace now. No. Okay, we'll stop there for now. You can see where the time-based corrector boards would have fitted had it had that option. Let's have a look at the recorder, the 822 model, making some interesting noises. These lights are flashing. This could be power supply problems. And the eject mechanism is half open and half closed. Doesn't sound too good, does it? Okay, this one with what appears to be the bad power supply. Let's take a look inside this one as well. Again, no TBC on this one. Same mechanism. Power supply's over here. It might be that I can swap the power supply over. Let's have a quick look and see how feasible that is. Okay, so power supply's here. Let's see if we can just pop the bottom off and see whether it's easy enough to get to the power supply connectors. Popping the bottom off isn't as simple as all that, is it? It's not built like that. Interestingly, one of these boards is labelled fuse, so it's worth having a quick look at the fuses on there. They're all fine. Look at the capacitors while we're here. That looks fine. No, well, I'm not seeing anything on that board that looks wrong. So changing a power supply looks a little bit difficult. I can't quite work out where the connectors are. Interestingly, it says here, do not use tapes that are longer than 3 hours for full size or 30 minutes for VHS-C. Well, VHS-C, had this problem that the recording times were way too long. So very few people use the 30-minute tapes. They always used to use 45-minute. So really that makes it fairly much unusable. I can't see the point of that. They've kind of admitted that the format was rubbish. Next I'll try this. It's Panasonic AU-63 M2 player. Got a couple of tapes, a small size and large size. In case you're not already familiar, M2 was a pretty much failed attempt at Panasonic to replicate on VHS what Betacam SP did to Betamax. So Betamax, they put a metal tape in it, and then you had an analog, high quality analog recording for studio use, which used the tape at a much higher speed. And they tried to replicate that with M2. But with Betamax, the smaller size tape was the regular Betamax size tape, and then they did a larger tape as well. With M2, because the tape was already large, too large for camera use really, they thought what they'll do is make that a large size tape and make a smaller tape for camera use. And that's where it all started to go horribly wrong, because it meant that to put 90 minutes of tape in this, you had to make the tape ridiculously thin, and so the whole mechanism became horribly complicated. They also decided to make it semi-backward compatible with SVHS, and that some, but not this I don't believe, but some M2 machines will play SVHS tapes. So this was a format that pretty much flunked. But I have a machine already. I have an AU-750, which works, but I'd like a backup machine. So let's see what this does, if anything, when I power it up. Getting a faint whistling noise. Sure sign that there's a power supply failure there. And it makes a wee sound as I switched it off. So clearly the power supply is not running. Okay, there's no more I can do to test that. Let's try the 65, which is a recorder. Okay, so we have the AU-65. Interestingly, the other machine said automatic tracking, whereas this one has a tracking control. Right, let's power it up and see if anything happens. Faint whistling noise. Whirring away just the same as the other one. So they both have defective power supplies. Okay, with the lid off, that looks to be the power supply. I do have another similar machine in my storeroom, an AU-65H I think it is, but I don't know if it's got exactly the same power supply in it. Let's see how hard it is to remove the power supply. Seems to be a handle on the top as though it's designed to lift out. So let's see what happens if we undo some screws. Right, I've undone these 4 screws. There's some gunge here which may well be capacitor gunge. Let's undo the connectors from underneath and see if we can take the power supply out. It seems fairly easy. Right. So what's all this gunge here? Let's get the power supply apart a bit. These are the only screws I see got much access to. So I better start with those. Okay, so it splits into 2 halves. There's a set of capacitors here rated at 250 volts, 680 microfarads. There's a bridge rectifier and a few other components in here. I would say in all probability this is not the problem area. I would say we're much more likely to be looking at capacitor trouble here, especially due to the gunge that was at the bottom of this board. I would say we're looking at a mass capacitor failure here. It looks like a great number of these capacitors have been oozing electrolyte, so the board will need some cleaning up and a lot of capacitors replacing, if not all of them. So quite a lot of work involved in that. We can only hope that the power supply hasn't suffered any further damage. Look, it's actually getting gunge on my fingers. It's really quite horrible. Okay, well, let's start working on that. So here are the capacitors I've removed from that power supply. Most of them were leaky or low capacitance. A few were in spec, but to be honest, not that many. So I removed the whole lot. So every capacitor, electrolytic capacitor, has been removed from this board, and I've taken a note of all the values. Now I need to replace them all. Got a big list here of all my capacitors and which ones were bad. I don't have all of those in stock, or at least not all of them in high enough quality components. Many of them I have them in sort of Chinese junk components, but I'm only going to use decent branded ones in this. So I'm going to have to order some of these in. Power supply is made of 2 halves. This lower board here basically rectifies the mains and provides an output. There's not too much more in that one. Those main filter capacitors from the mains rectifier were both fine. They usually are, but it's not unknown for them to fail. There was only one capacitor here I had to check, and that was completely toast. So I've replaced that one. And then on the main board here, I've replaced every single electrolytic capacitor on here with just a few small compromises due to the components I had in stock, which was that this is supposed to be 330 microfarad. I had to fit a 470, but I looked at this circuit diagram there and I don't believe that's a problem. and there's a slightly ungainly thing going on here. This is supposed to be a 27, and I had to make it out of 22 and two 2.2s. There was a lot of capacitor gunge on the board, and I was able to just about get this into my ultrasonic tank with some PCB cleaner to sort of put it in one way and turn it around and put it in the other. So I've got all that gunge off the board, and it's had plenty of time to dry. It was done yesterday. So I need to reassemble these two halves, and then I can test the machine. And I think the same power supply is used in both of the M2 machines, so I might be able to test both machines with this one power supply. Right, wish me luck. Right, I'm just refitting the power supply in the recorder. I've cleaned up some of the gunge from the metalwork, so that hopefully it'll make all good earth contact and what have you, and won't rust. I won't refit the bottom panel just yet because we may end up borrowing this power supply for the player. Okay, that's the last screw. I've also cleaned up some of the connectors where some of that gunge had gone. Okay, YouTube, wish me luck. Here goes. Just the same sort of faint whistling noise it made before I changed all the capacitors. So there's something else wrong with this power supply. Oh, poo. Okay, I've been poking about with the power connectors on the power supply. Cleaned up the power connectors. The schematics I have aren't quite the right version of power supply, so I was working in the dark a bit. But anyhow, something interesting's happened. Oh. A moment ago it worked. It's trying my patience. So we may have a bit of a connector issue, but we'll come back to that in a moment. Okay, can we power it up now? Good. I'll switch the light off because of course VHS based formats are optically based with end sensors. So let's put a tape in and see if anything happens. We have small and large tapes. Let's start with a large one, I think. And it now decides to not work again. What is going on with this machine? Well, it definitely works when it wants to. Let's see if we can get it to power up and then put a tape in. Right, it's running at the moment. That sounds like a loading problem. Okay, that's probably drive belts up here, so I'll have a look at those. Actually, the belt just seemed a bit frozen. Maybe it's not been used for a long time. Try again. Now the power supply is not working again. Oh, this is such fun. So the power supply seems to work when the machine's sat on its left-hand side, but stopped working when it's on its base, usually. So let's take the power supply out and have a look for bad connections somewhere along probably these connectors. Well, I've started to wonder if the problem with that AU-65 is the machine and not the power supply. So, here's the AU-63. This is a power supply that came out of this, and it's done the same sort of trick. Goop everywhere. So that'll need a rebuild as well. But just maybe I can get it to work in this machine. If it doesn't work, we'll hopefully be a little bit further along understanding the problem. Okay, so wish me luck on this one, see if we get any results at all. No, just the same. I've done some cleaning of the circuit board again. Let's see if it'll work. Okay. And I'd manually wound a tape in. I'm not quite sure if it's trying to lace or what at the moment. I think, oh, it's lacing, I think. Is it lacing? Not sure. Let's set you up so you can see that. Can't give you too much light because, of course, being VHS based, it doesn't like very much light. Let's put the tape in. lacing seems to be very slow and laboured, doesn't it? Okay, we'll have to look at the motor that does the lacing. Dare I switch it off? It may not come back on again. So here's the loading motor belt here. Could be a little bit easy to get to, couldn't it? Let's see if we can get that off. Right, let's see what I've got to replace that with. And this is from a Sanyo Beta video recorder, which seems appropriate because of course this is Panasonic and Sanyo are now the same company. Right, I've managed to put that really awkward drive belt on down here. Skews a low light level, but you know, being VHS based. Right, I think it's still not going to lace properly. I think there's a lubrication issue with the lacing mechanism, but let's just try it. Oh, that's slow, isn't it? Yeah, that's not having it. After a number of attempts, I managed to get it to lace up, and it's attempting to play a tape. It's complaining of low RF, and you can see the video tracking meter on the top right is low. So either the heads are ruined or they may just require cleaning. So I'll put a head cleaner tape through and try again. A lot of the time the power supply trips out, but on this occasion I got it running after cleaning the heads. The RF meter is now looking good, the audio is good, the servos are locked, and the machine is apparently fully working. But there's no playback picture, just a black screen, even when connected to the video output marked Super, which should have the time code superimposed on the picture. So there's another fault as well as the power supply tripping. Okay, I'll leave it there for now. So a quick refresh where we are. This is the AU-65 M2 machine, which is the recorder, and I've rebuilt the power supply, but I'm still having problems with the power supply tripping out intermittently. However, sometimes it will run, and when it does run, the machine all powers up, but then we have a problem with the lacing being a bit laboured, and I've tried some lubrication and drive belt on the lubrication on the lacing side, and occasionally it will succeed in lacing, and when it does, the machine plays and rewinds and shuttle searches everything as it should and shows a good RF signal here. Really key that, because it means the heads should be in good order, and I get good sound and all the servos lock, but I don't get a picture. I just get what it seems to be sync pulses, because I get a black screen. And that's even true of the output, which is called Super, which means it's superimposed, should have the time code on there, superimposed on the screen, and even that's black. So hopefully that won't be too hard to fix once I can sort the other problems out. Now you remember I also have the AU-63, so what I've done, I have the power supply for that one. What I've decided to do is rebuild this power supply, and it could help in the debugging process, because we don't know if this power supply is faulty or the machine's tripping out. So I've already put this one through the ultrasonic tank to clean it up a bit. I'm going to rip out all those capacitors. I've ordered new ones, I don't have enough, so I'll refit it with new capacitors throughout, and then hopefully that can help us debug exactly what's going on these machines. Remember, I also have the two Super VHS machines, one of which seems to have mechanical trouble, the other has another DUF power supply, and we have the Sony SL-C9 Beta, which also seems to have a power supply problem. So I have all those to work on in the near future as well. So please remember to like, share, and especially subscribe, and I'll do a lot more content on audio and video technology shortly. Bye for now.